Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead on and get ready to get started. Okay, my name is Damon Thompson. I'm the president of Thompson Business Services. Thank you for joining today for my session on fundraising one-on-one. I'm going to discuss today developing a fundraising plan that includes more than just grants. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to put the questions in the chat and then I will respond. So let us get ready to move forward and maximize the time that we have today. Okay, so just to give you a little bit about me, my name is, as I stated, my name is Damon Thompson, president and founder of Thompson Business Services. I'm a small business consultant. I started my company back in 2012, focused on faith-based organizations and helping them to be able to secure funds for community development and neighborhood revitalization projects. So I'm a grant writer by trade. I also help people to do business plans, start their businesses, and then I also do a monthly workshop series. I have about 9 workshops that I do focused on nonprofit startup to starting your LLC to how to write your business plan, and then of course talking about fundraising. So my goals for this workshop, we're going to talk about the components of a fundraising plan. We're going to talk about drafting a solicitation letter and then knowing, attracting, and retaining donors. Okay, so components of a fundraising plan. When we talk about fundraising, your fundraising plan is an important roadmap for your organization's fiscal operations. Typically, when you draft a fundraising plan, it covers a 12-month period. It covers whatever your operating period in. When we think about fundraising, fundraising is important aside from having programs, because what it does is it helps you and your board to be able to figure out what are your streams of income, and it helps you to be able to diversify those streams of income, particularly to focus on donors, special events for the year, if you're going to do fee-for-service activities, or if you're going to do in-kind contributions. My particular general rule of thumb is when you're developing your fundraiser plan as a nonprofit, no more than 25% of your operating budget should consist of grants. Why do I say that? I say that because particularly we are in a competitive environment when it comes to grants, and you have funders now that are shifting from the old model of providing multi-year grants, and now a lot of funders are just providing grants for literally 12 months of your programming. So it's really key and it's really important that as you are developing your fundraising plan and you're thinking about, well, what is my strategy for the upcoming year? And you're talking about your board, that you really want to make sure to diversify your income. That is just not focused on you having a grant writer and then you going out and then soliciting grants for your organization. As you think about the plan, you think about when we continue on to talk about more components of a fundraising plan, of course, your fundraising goals are set annually. How do you do that? You always start off by reviewing your previous year revenues and expenditures. And of course, as I stated before, you do this in conjunction with your board. This is just not something that you as an executive director or as a program director that you do solely on your own. You involve your board, particularly if you have a fund development committee who helps to provide assistance. Of course, you always want to make sure that you align your fundraising with your mission and your goals of the organization. As you're developing a plan, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're drafting a narrative that talks about the different methods of fundraising that you're going to do for that year. As I stated before, you really want to create a chart. What does having a chart do and a plan do? It helps with accountability. It also helps to keep people on task. It helps to keep you on task. It helps to keep your board of directors on task, committee. It helps to make sure that the team is all on the same page and you have something that you can always use to go back to and review during your meetings. So as a part of that fundraising plan, when you're talking about your narrative, you want to talk about, of course, what type of special events will we do, donor solicitations, sponsorships, grants, And the most important thing is within that plan is you want to create a calendar. You want to create a calendar for everything that you're going to do for that fiscal year. As I stated before, having that fundraising plan helps to keep everyone accountable. It allows you to be able to assign accountable parties to meet those action steps within your actual fundraising plan. So as we're talking about a plan, I just want to walk through and I want to show you a sample of a fundraising plan that I put together before for a client. So as you can see with this plan is just that. Kind of real, keep it simple, keep the format simple. But like I said, it's something that you can always pull out at your board meetings to go over with your board. You as a program director can always review. So when you think about your fundraising plan, the thing is you want, as I talked about, in that first column, you want to outline what is our plan, what are our methods for this fiscal year. Then, of course, what's our projected goal? Then to keep yourself on task, what was our actual goal of the event? Then, of course, what's our target? Who are we going to target and focus on for this? What are some of the action steps or things that we need to do in order to make this plan a reality? Who's going to be responsible for it, the when, and then, of course, what is the cost? So let's say your organization decides to put together in this plan a silent auction. The projected goal for the silent auction was $5,000. This is something that you're planning for next year, post-COVID. So of course you don't have an actual goal yet to see that the event has actually happened. So you're just focused on your projected right now. Who's your target? Your target for invitations to the silent auctions, of course, existing donors that you have, current volunteers, friends, family, board members, the community at large. What are some of the action steps that you need to do? We need to secure a venue. We need to make sure we set an operating budget. We want to look for sponsors. We want to set a ticket price. And then most importantly, how are we going to advertise? Well, who's going to take on this task of putting together this silent auction? Your program committee of your board has stepped up and said, okay, we will take on this. So this will be our fund for this year, for 2021. Our goal will be to put together a silent auction with the goal of raising $5,000 for our nonprofit. Of course, our costs are to be determined as we get further along in the action steps. Your next plan is, well, we want to increase our donor base going into 2021 by 20%. So that looks like at least 45 new donors contributing to our organization. Who's our target? New and existing members, new members that we have within our organization, existing members of our organization, and then potential targets and potential donors. Once again, could be the community at large, could be board members making recommendation, your volunteers, people who actually attend. Let's say if you're a literacy organization and you provide after school services. It could be the actual parents who send their children to your actual programs, who you may want to reach out as donors or teachers. So of course, what are our action steps? Our action steps are, we want to determine our strategy. Will our strategy be, of course, mass mailing, or will we do phone calls? Who's going to take on this task? The board of directors as a whole, working along with our executive director. The board of directors, of course, will make recommendations for donors, and then our executive director will also make recommendations on who we can potentially target to be donors for our organization. When this is going to be ongoing throughout the entire year. This is something that we're going to do if our fiscal year is January to December, something that we're going to focus on the entire year. Right now, we believe our typical costs will be print materials, which is we're going to do a one-page annual report for the organization to send out with an appeal, and then, of course, our postage. Your next plan is we want to submit a grant application to Dollar General. Let's say you're a literacy-based organization. They have a literacy foundation, so they provide funding for organizations who are actually working with school-aged children to improve literacy, reading comprehension. Your goal is you have a new program that you're rolling out at elementary school that you have adopted to provide after-school tutoring for 2 hours a day, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Your goal is $4,000 from Dollar General. Who's our target? The Dollar General Literacy Foundation. What's our action step? Potentially, we may need to secure a grant writer. Who's going to be responsible for that? Of course, the program director who's over the actual literacy program will be responsible for preparing the information that the grant writer will need in order to prepare the proposal. When? The deadline is February 2021. What's the cost? The grant writer has told us that their fee is $75 an hour. Then, of course, Giving Tuesday, which is the Tuesday following Thanksgiving. This is a huge day fundraising-wise for nonprofits around the country. So what is our projected goal from Giving Tuesday? Our projected goal is we want to raise $10,000 for our organization. Who are we going to target? We're going to target our existing donors, volunteers, and contacts within our donor database. What do we need to do? We need to review our donor database. We need to make sure that we have updated contact information, phone numbers, email addresses, and of course, we want to do a social media campaign. So we want to use all of our social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram. We want to put together a social media campaign to ask our volunteers for their support on Giving Tuesday. Who's going to be responsible for this? This is going to be our Fund Development Committee. Our Fund Development Committee, in addition to our program staff, is going to take the lead. When? Giving Tuesday this year is December 1st of 2020. Cost, really the cost is going to be none because you're using your social media campaign. So it's going to be free resources to you. It's just a matter of you making sure and figuring out what is the best way for you to get the word out on Giving Tuesday to your supporters about your organization and your needs. And then, of course, your plan should always also include a contribution from your board members. I cannot stress this enough in organizations that I work with and in organizations that I talk to, and I even talk about it within my board of directors workshop. Your board should always have some sort of financial contribution to the organization. Why is that? Because your board members are your ambassadors. So not only do they give their time and their service to the organization, but they also financially provide to the organization as well. So in this instance, your plan is we're going to institute a board contribution, $200 annually from each of our board members. We have 10 board members, so the expectation is that we'll raise $2,000. Whether it's a financial and they're coming out of there writing you a check directly, or let's say you have an event and they're selling tickets to the event or they're purchasing the event, whatever it is, each board member has an annual contribution of $200. What do you need to do? You need to secure approval from the board of directors to amend your bylaws to include this new contribution. Who is going to be responsible for that? That is a discussion that your board president and executive committee will have internally, and then roll that out to the board of directors for their approval. When? This is going to be ongoing. Of course, your board members are going to have your entire fiscal year to be able to provide this support. You just want to be able to make sure that you track it and that you show it for each board member. And then, of course, there is no cost because it's free. It's not, you don't have to put together a mass mailing or you don't have to, print materials. This is a general conversation that you're having with your board. And so as we're moving forward and we're going along into the fundraising plan, one thing that is key for boards is being able to solicit donations, whether it's cash donations from a donor, whether it's corporate support. This should be a part of your overall fundraising plan for the year. So when you think about drafting a solicitation letter, nonprofits can solicit companies and individuals for either what we call event donations, which is product support, like for instance, Whole Foods. Whole Foods provides gift cards to local organizations that they can use for events, or like Painting with a Twist. Painting with a Twist, through their charitable contributions, they will provide you free paintings that you can use. Let's go back to that silent auction idea. If you're looking for ideas for a silent auction, you would check to see who does corporate giving via products, or you have sponsorships where organizations provide you financial support. So before you actually start drafting solicitation letters, the first thing you want to do is you want to research the corporate giving programs for companies that you normally support in your daily lives. So there's an organization that I'm a part of. It's a think tank for particularly for faith-based nonprofits. It's called Urban Awareness. They're out of Chicago. I'll leave my email in the chat if anyone is interested. They have put together a really comprehensive corporate giving guide. It really has about 250 different resources for nonprofits that they can use for either event donations or sponsorships. So I'll be willing to email that out to anyone. Like I said, I'll leave my email address in the chat, and then you can contact me directly and I can email that to you. Typically, solicitation requests these days, because we're in a technological era, they're submitted online. And generally, each company, if you go to their website, they list this information. There's a section on there about charitable giving or corporate giving, whether it's enterprise, whether it's Costco, whether it's Sam's Club, whether it's Johnson & Johnson. They have on their website a platform for corporate giving. You just want to make sure that you do your research. Of course, when submitting solicitation requests, you want to please make sure to follow the instructions. Most organizations do have a time frame that you have to submit your request into them. So you want to make sure that you submit the request within the time frame as listed by the company, particularly if it's for an event. If it's for an event, general rule of thumb is organizations will ask for your request, particularly 60 to 90 days for your event. If it's an event in August and you're applying in July, I can tell you right now, particularly if you're going to a corporation, you're really cutting it close, and that request may not even get a response. So you want to make sure that you start doing your research. I cannot stress this enough, particularly if you're looking for event donations, or like I said, even sponsorships. If you're looking for financial support, let's say if it's financial support for a summer camp that you're doing or a back to school drive, you want to make sure that you just follow the organization's time frames and get those requests in early enough so you have a good shot at being able to receive, whether it's product or financial support. Then, of course, if you are submitting a solicitation request to an individual, let's say you're doing a mailing to your donors, you always want to make sure to include your employee identification number on the letter, and I recommend that for tax purposes. So I'll show you an example of a solicitation letter for an organization I was working with. So this is a solicitation letter to the Detroit Tigers Foundation. This is a personalized letter that was submitted. This organization was called JWAT, stood for Jesus Was the Teenager Too. It was a youth mentoring organization. They had what's called a leadership academy, where they introduced high school seniors to community service as well as peer mentors. So let's say, for instance, if a youth was interested in saying that they wanted to go into a law enforcement career, they had a volunteer come in who was a police officer, and so they did peer-to-peer mentoring over a 12-month period. So one of their events was an annual silent auction where they raised money for their scholarship program for the youth graduating from the Leadership Academy. And they also had a literacy building program that they did with Spain Elementary School. So the goal of the silent auction was to raise money for their scholarship program. So in this solicitation letter to the Detroit Tigers Foundation, they started with an opening introduction about the nonprofit, which included their mission and vision. The mission was to bridge the gap from youth to adulthood by creating opportunities that will focus on spiritual growth, academics, leadership, and social development. Real clear, real concise. Then, of course, they gave a history of the organization. Within the letter, you give an overview of your programs and activities. Generally, you include your most recent statistics. So this is where you show impact of your organization. So you want to show number of people served, impact, years in operation, particularly if you have a target area. So for them, we'll just use an example. It says since 2006, JY has provided scholarships to graduating high school seniors to attend 4-year accredited colleges or universities. In November 2014, we selected our first participants for our first ever Leadership Academy, this first ever cohort. And then it just gives an overview of what they're going to talk about in the Leadership Academy, providing a multifaceted experience to not only address the financial needs of minority students who aspire to attend college, but guide them through the process of higher education, molding them into dynamic leaders with a commitment to public service and humanitarian efforts. Then, of course, there's the ask. There's the event description. So this was their first annual charity auction, Saturday, March 21st, 2015. What was their goal? Their goal was all proceeds from this event would benefit the Leadership Academy Scholarship Program. Their projected target was $12,000 for this event to be able to give scholarships to these students. And then continue this Leadership Academy to keep it going on further. And then, of course, you always want to talk about within the letter, the benefits to the corporation or the individual, whether it will be, hey, we will make sure that your name goes on our marquee, or whether it's you'll receive free tickets to our charitable event, or we'll make sure to thank you on our website. So when you do your ask, there's always a benefit back to the organization itself. It could be, hey, we're going to have this volunteer gala where we're going to particularly thank all of our sponsors. You're invited to that. Here's a ticket to that. Like I said, we'll make sure that we place the word about your support and your contribution on all of our social media platforms. So it's a give and take relationship. But once again, this is another method for you in terms of when you're thinking about your fundraising plan, as we talked about. We talked about there's the plan, and then one step within this plan is you're looking at solicitations. This was a solicitation for a financial contribution from the Detroit Tigers Foundation to support the Leadership Academy. Then next, we want to transition over into donors. We want to talk about why donors are important to the lifeblood of your organization. So when you think about donors, what do people give to? So this chart, I pulled this chart from Candid, formerly the Foundation Center. So it shows that why are donors important? So in 2018, people in the United States contributed almost $428 billion to various nonprofit organizations and gifts to organizations. So as you can see, 12% went to grant-making foundations that like the Community Foundation of Southeastern Michigan or Kellogg Foundation that make grants back to charitable organizations. 12% went to organizations focused on human services, whether it's free dental care, whether it's lupus awareness, whether it's transportation and medical events, education, religion, international affairs, public society benefits, environment, animals. So this just gives you an idea of why donors are important. So people contributed almost $428 billion to various different types of nonprofit organizations in the United States in 2018. So you say to yourself, okay, why is that important for my organization? Because it shows you that during this time, people are still giving to contribute. People are still donating to their favorite causes, whether it's the American Cancer Society, whether it's Focus Hope. A nonprofit should always have a donor database, and they should always never be afraid to reach out to their donors, because your donors are actually some of your best supporters. So things to consider when you're thinking about donors. And as we're continuing to talk about donors and solicitations, what's most important, your board members are always ambassadors for your nonprofit organization. So your board members have connections. They have friends, they have family, they have people in their industries. So it's very key when you think about the selection of board members or people that you're thinking about bringing onto your board, or even your current board members, that they have really what I like to call an elevator pitch for your organization. Because I say this because, just like I tell small business owners, anytime you're out in the community, there may always be an opportunity for you to connect with someone or network with someone who may help your organization, whether it's financial, whether it's them providing their time, whether it's them just helping to spread the good word about the works that your organization is doing. So that is a responsibility of your board. It is to be an ambassador or a stakeholder for your organization. But it's also you as program staff working with them and equipping them with the information that they need and having that, as I like to call it, like elevator pitch or like your 30-second pitch on the organization. Social media, when it comes to storytelling, is your best friend to helping you celebrate your success. What do donors like? Donors like to see impact. So if your organization gives back to the community, and let's say, for instance, you're doing a back to school drive, and then your back to school drive, you've been talking about it on Facebook, and you've been doing Facebook Live, and you've been telling people, hey, we're going to have over 500 kids at this event. We need your support. Well, donors like to see the impact. They like to see the smiling faces of the children that you're helping. They like to hear about testimonials from the parents saying how this was a much needed resource that you provided to them. So social media, as I stress to nonprofits all the time, it is for you, it is free, it is no cost, and it is really one of the best resources that you have in being able to connect with donors and telling them about your story and celebrating your success. Of course, things to consider when it comes to donors, networking is key. I go back to that, board members being your ambassadors. You also, as program staff, networking is key. Having donors are all about building relationships and people that trust that you're going to be transparent and use their donations for what it is that you're telling them that you're going to use it for. So I cannot stress the importance and the value of networking. Of course, anyone can be a donor, from volunteers, program participants, employees, board members, friends, family, local church members, PTA members, block club members. Anyone can be a donor if you have a prepared donor plan and know what it is that you want to ask for them, know what it is that you want to ask for from your donors. As an organization, you cannot be afraid of the word no, particularly when it comes to fundraising. You're going to have people that say no. You're going to have people that say yes. However, they do not know about your organization unless you get out there and unless you're not afraid of asking. Fundraising, just like we're running an organization, it can be a full-time job. It's one of the most important things that you can do. Of course, you always want to personalize your appeal. Cannot stress this enough. People give to causes they believe in. Why do people donate? Because it's generally something near and dear to their heart. Why do I donate to an organization called Lupus Detroit? Because I have family members personally impacted by lupus. And so I see what the organization does, and I see how they impact those who have lupus. Why do people give to the American Cancer Society? Because either they themselves may be a cancer survivor or they know someone who's been a cancer survivor. So people give to the causes that they believe in. So whatever your appeal is, personalize it to those donors that you're thinking about requesting an ask from. Then what is it about? How do you attract donors? Biggest thing is with attracting donors, developing relationships with people that are interested in what your organization is doing. How do you find those people? Once again, volunteers, board members, friends, family, followers on social media, Facebook followers, Instagram followers. Those are people who are really interested in what it is that your organization is doing. So you want to make sure to be able to track that. Main thing is donors need to know that your organization exists. Once again, do you have some sort of online presence? Do you engage with your followers? Are you focused in a target market? Let's say if you're a neighborhood focused organization, do the actual constituents in your community know about you? Do you do events? Do you go, door to door? Do you do mass mailing, door hangers? Do you have testimonials from people who have actually participated and either come to your events or they've utilized your services? These are just some of the things that you want to think about when you're developing that donor appeal. Donors need to know that your organization exists because there are hundreds of organizations out there. So your organization is just as good as any of those other organizations. It's just a matter of you putting together your story and being able to storytell. Of course, I say this all the time for the board that I'm on, you want to ask your board members and volunteers to refer people from their networks, whether it's colleagues, friends, or family. And then one thing you do, you also want to make sure you make it easy for people to donate. You want to make sure you use a mobile platform. And then donors always like a personalized letter. Thank yous go a long way, whether it's just a little card in the mail, you have some pre-printed cards, or it's actually a handwritten letter. Donors like thank you, whether it's something on your social media pages, thanking all of your donors. Just think about that. There should always be, as I like to call it, the ask, and then the donor gives, and then you thank the donor and you show your appreciation. So when it comes to keeping donors, big rule number one, you have to be transparent. We've seen so many stories these days about organizations mishandling and misappropriating funds. You want to make sure that you let the donors know the impact of his or her contribution to your organization. I cannot stress how important transparency is these days, because you hear more about the negative things and scandals about nonprofits sometimes than the good that nonprofits are doing. So you just want to make sure that you're always transparent and letting your donors and people who contribute to your organization know what it is, that the impact of what it is that you're doing. Of course, you want to provide great service to your donors. You want to make sure that they feel good about giving to your organization, that there's a feel good moment. There's something personal that makes them want to give to your organization, that they want to keep coming back. You want to make sure that we create what I like to call, once again, that culture of you're asking, but you're giving thanks and you're reporting back. So how that reporting back goes back to you're being transparent. You want to make sure that you develop a communication strategy for your donors. You want to reach out to your donors more than once a year with a financial ask. Typically, I recommend to nonprofits that you do something quarterly. So every quarter, you may want to get in the habit of developing some sort of communication strategy so that your donors don't forget about you. So that if you ask this year, November 2020, that you don't touch the donors again until November 2021. Even if it's just, hey, we want to thank you. We have a back to school event coming up. And so we want to say thank you for your support in the past. You supported us for the last 5 years. We've been able to impact 2,500 youth through this. This time we're asking, would you like to come out and actually volunteer? So, it's something different. It's a different pitch method to your donors. Well, not a financial ask, but it's a time ask. So, but just switch it up. Be really strategic and really thoughtful in how you engage with your donors and the methods that you use in engaging with your donors. Of course, you want to continue to develop a relationship with your donors that goes beyond just to ask. You want to invite them to events. You want to make sure that you're publishing their names in your promotional materials, that you're publishing their names on your social media platforms. And if you can, you want to offer them some sort of, a reward or a benefit, almost like a, incentive package for different donation levels. Once again, if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. So when you ask, you want to be able to, like I said, get creative in ways that you continue to cultivate that cycle of giving and cultivate having donors coming back. Then the most important thing is, you see I have a double asterisk by it, is that you want to maintain a donor database that you always have their latest contact information, even if it's just something that's not real, robust, and it's just Excel. You want to make sure that you're tracking, because once again, just like I tell small business owners, every time you're out in the community and you run into someone, and let's say you're discussing what it is that your nonprofit does, you need to be ready for them to say, hey, how can I help your organization? So if they give you a business card, you want to come back and you want to put that information in a database. You at least want to scan it and make sure you retain it. One thing I found with nonprofits that sometimes is the donor database kind of goes by the is an afterthought, but the donor database is really important because it is an easy way to make sure that you keep in contact with those who are either existing donors or those you want to make donors. So I cannot stress this enough. You want to make sure that you have some way of tracking the contact information for volunteers, once again, program participants, people who've come out to events, people who may, sign up to your mailing list if you have a mailing list for your nonprofit. You want to make sure that you're able to track that information. And then with that, I will open it up to questions. Honestly, I would say it's an open and frank conversation, Dawn, in terms of asking board members to help fundraise. It really needs to be something that's driven by the board. And I've seen this before, like on the board that I'm on now. It seems like it's always a discussion that comes from the program staff asking us about fundraising, but because the board is accountable to each other, it really is something that the board president on down should be leading that charge. I've seen organizations that board members typically are engaged when they're each pushing each other. And it almost becomes like a competition. Well, let's see if I can outdo, my board member here, or let's see if I can outdo my board member there. So it really is something that those discussions need to be had amongst the board within itself, as the board has that camaraderie, they have those relationships, and they're accountable to each other. Lou, do you have it? Okay, you say you tried Facebook, you tried tweets. Lou, do you have a donor database? Because what I will probably do for Giving Tuesday, if you tried the social media post, what I would do is just a mailing to all of your donors. And what it does is it gives them the opportunity to give beyond Giving Day, so that it's just not focused on that one day. So let's use, for example, Focus Hope. I get, because I donate to Focus Hope, I get a mailing from Focus Hope generally maybe about 2 weeks before Giving Day. So what it does is it plants the seed in my mind, and then of course I go on their social media platforms. Then I see the social media platform as a reminder. So what I would say is I would try to mass mailing and see if the mass mailing to your donors works. I will put together a postcard, just something, like I said, that you can get out to all of your donors to help to go along with whatever it is that you're doing on social media. I tend to find social media as a reminder to people when it comes to giving day. So you want to make sure that you're actively engaging with those followers that you have, to use that as a strategy. Meredith, feel free to email me, and then I will send that to you today. Thank everybody for the questions. Yeah, what I found is, like I said, when it comes to donors, it really is trial and error. And there's some people who, all right, I send it to you, Dr. Mary. I'll make sure to write down your email address and send that to you. What I found is, like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, it's something that really is trial and error. But I cannot, in this environment that we in now, I really like to focus on my clients about making sure that they're just not so really not so dependent on just grants, making sure that you do have, like I said, that diversified stream. But also, it starts with your board. It is making sure that your board is accountable. I talk to a lot of organizations, and the first question I ask is, well, does your board contribute to the organization? Do you have an annual contribution? And by half of the time I get no. What I always say is, well, as a board member, as an ambassador to your organization, that they need to know that it's just not their time that they're giving, but it is also the monetary that they're giving as well. Because what that does is that those are the people that are sitting around the table supporting your organization. So before you go outside, everyone that's internal and that's key to the organization should be making sure to support it. Joanna, I'll make sure to send it out to you as well too. So I will send that out within the next hour. It depends. It really depends on the relationship of the board. I know for the board that I sit on, our board president always reminds us. And so she's very transparent about who's contributed and how much. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's a good way to keep board members engaged. And then it also does to help people too, to remind them about, hey, okay, let's say once again, I'll use the example of if the contribution is $200. Well, hey, we have 5 members who've contributed $200. We have another 5 who have contributed anything. So we just want to check in and see, just to remind you about it. How are you planning to do it? Keep in mind, you have until the end of the year. These are your different ways to go about it. So I don't have an issue with it. Like I said, I just think it's something that it should come from the board. So it should be something that is driven and developed within those relationships within the board of directors, that they shouldn't have a problem with holding each other accountable. Hey Meredith, if you still, can you send me your if there's anyone else that's interested in the guidebook on, all right, thanks. If there's anybody else who's interested in the guide from Urban Awareness on the corporate sponsorships, feel free, like I said, to send me an email. I'll send that out this afternoon. Urban Awareness also just created a public group on Facebook that talks about fundraising. So they're going to start doing what they call mini grant Mondays, offering up to $1,000 for various nonprofits across the country for whether it's for events or whether it's for programs. And then like I said, they're a great resource. They also provide free workshops on whether it's fundraising, whether it's board specifics, whether it's developing your LLC. So you can also find them on Facebook. Like I said, you can find me via my website, or you can also find my page on Facebook as well. So, like I said, if you have any other questions, you can feel free to email me. This has been a great discussion. I thank everybody once again. And then like I said, I'm keeping a list. So expect to see the corporate sponsorship guide within the next hour.